Hello, everyone. I wanted to just assalamu alaikum,
Walaikum salam.
and thank you for taking the time from your Ramadan season or month and being here with us. We really, really appreciate it. I know it's a kind of like a challenging month between times and prayers and not being able to eat and all of that. So we deeply appreciate. I'm very humble to be up here with you. And I want to welcome everyone here to this session as well, especially the 23 interns whose first day is today. And for those of you who don't know me, mostly the interns, my name is Suba Nadaraja. I'm VMLYR's Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I think I met some of you today. Before we dive, Manars, into our questions, I want to say thanks to a few folks. The comms team for putting this whole thing, all the behind the scene and promoting and all of that. The ops team for taking care of all these arrangements and chairs and things. A special thanks to Jess and Daya Kiefer for designing the lovely poster and Freddie for printing it. And to the rest of the VMLYR and our family, welcome and thank you for being here. I know this is a kind of an odd time to have a session like this, but we wanted to be very mindful towards Manars, especially since you're fasting, and I didn't want this session to be during lunchtime, would be somewhat disrespectful. And for the benefit of our interns, what is Brave Questions Safe Spaces? This program is powered by VMLYR and our DEI practice. It is an open discussion format to share, learn, empathize, be inspired, and understand each other and how to better impact the world we live in. It is also a forum where we are encouraged to ask and respectfully discuss real questions that we would otherwise feel nervous, uncomfortable, or apprehensive discussing regarding other perspectives, circumstances, and cultures. I also want to say that it's not a forum for discussing political and religious views, but to be mindful, today's discussion and topic does kind of tiptoe around the religious context. Therefore, we also want to be extra cautious and respectful. As I turn my page, I'm no David Letterman, because he doesn't usually have all of this. I watched him last night when his latest second series of what is it called? The one on Netflix. My Next Guest or something like that. Yes. He doesn't have anything that he's holding in his hand. He's pretty remarkable. Okay, so let me share a bit about our guest today. Manars is the president of Shabir Advisors, an integrated strategic management consulting company focusing on planning, marketing, public relations, diversity information, and education on a national and international basis. She's also the co-founder of Crescent Peace Society here in Kansas City. Shabir co-authored the chapter on Islam in the Essential Guide to Religious Traditions and Spirituality for Healthcare Providers, published in 2013. It's an extraordinary compendium of religious traditions as an invaluable resource to all healthcare providers. The user-friendly resource contains specific and detailed information on faith traditions vital for providing optimal spiritual care in a clinical setting. Her article, I'm an American Muslim Woman, was published in many national publications such as New Light, the National Catholic Reporter, The Boomer, Market Advisor, just to name a few. Was also featured in CBS special Open Hearts, Open Minds in October 2002, and interviewed in 2003 on Voice of America. In February 2005, she presented an hour-long program on the radio show Voice of the Cape that aired in Cape Town, South Africa to 150,000 listeners. Shabir is a mother to 4 Eagle Scouts and a grandmother. She's also a certified tree farmer. Pretty incredible. Let's give Manar Shabir, a warm welcome. Manars, here's the format for today's discussion. I'll be asking you a few questions, and if we have time, we'll open up to the audience and they can ask a couple of questions as well. So Our discussion today is titled An American Woman in Hijab, Struggle and Strength. My first question for you, while hijab is a symbol, in reality, it is much more than that. So what does hijab mean to you, and why do you wear one?
Well, it's my pleasure being with all of you today and in the ether as well. So hijab is a conversation I've had for a very long time, even as a child. I did not cover until I went on the Hajj, the pilgrimage in Mecca. And I did not know when I was actually going to do this. But I knew actually during Ramadan, it's a very self-renewal, spiritual time. And at the end of it, I always felt closer to my faith. So I always knew along my journey, and we all are in journeys of some kind, that one day I would be wearing the hijab. So I did not wear the hijab when I was growing up. But when I decided that I wanted to go on the Hajj, it was a constant question, will I be wearing it or won't I be wearing it? Because I was very much active in the business community. I didn't know how people were going to perceive me, but I was also getting closer to my inner self of who I am. And so when you go to a Muslim country, you have to wear the headscarf. So that wasn't a question. But I'll tell you, getting the visa, I had to put on a scarf, and I could not get out of the car to get the picture taken at CBS. I mean, it was that kind of a thing. I was so stopped by that. But when I was in the performance of my Hajj and afterwards, I thought, this is who I really am. This is where I've come to be. And I said I wasn't going to tell myself I was going to wear it for the rest of time. That's a long time. But I said to myself, I'm going to take one day at a time. And that's what I've been doing since 2010. And when I was doing some hijab shopping when I was in Lebanon, I thought before, I'll just buy a few, I'm a strategic planner, I think ahead. I'll just keep a few, and then next thing I knew, they were so inexpensive. My stack got bigger and bigger, and I was realizing I was making a commitment, not even realizing it at that moment in time. And now, I love wearing hijab. It is who I am. I have all different colors. Every morning, it's just like how you would pick a shirt or something of that nature. I look to see how I coordinate it with my outfit and to be presented in the best way possible. Because I know that even before I speak, people are already judging me. People are already making some kind of conclusion about who I am. Because then when I also speak, they say, oh, you speak so well. And I'll say, oh, thank you. We all have accents. Mine just happens to be a Midwestern accent.
That's pretty incredible, because you were born in Philadelphia.
Yes. Yeah, so I don't say water anymore, but I used to say water.
Yeah.
And then we moved to Wisconsin when I was in high school, so I still say Wisconsin. I still say that. But I've lived in Kansas City now for the last 40 years.
It's funny you say water, and I have a very similar experience. When I first came to the US about 28 years ago, I went to Warrensburg. For some of you might know where Warrensburg is. And I did my master's in design in the University of Central Missouri. And the very first day we were there, a bunch of us went to, I think, Burger King. And I wasn't hungry because, I just came back from a 48-hour flight and I wasn't really hungry. And so all I wanted was water. And so I went up and I told the server, of the girl behind the counter, that I would like some water. And she looked at me and she said, sorry, we don't have water. And I said, you don't have water? How is that possible? And I said, W-A-T-E-R, water? And she said, oh, water. Yes, we do have water. So I have a water story for you too. It's funny you say that when people look at you and they have a perception or and kind of like an immediate judgment. And someone asked me last week, Suba, do you get that? And I said, all the time. In fact, it happened to me 2 weeks ago. I was on my way to New York for work, and the flight attendant came up to me and immediately assumed that I wasn't able to speak English, and asked me the question, "Do you speak English?" Which is actually a really good question, and I thought that the way he asked that question had a lot of respect, but it was immediately something that somebody actually would associate when they see somebody of a person with color. So I get that quite a bit too. In an article from The Beacon, I like to quote, "The hijab is an often misunderstood religious and cultural symbol and custom. It is also a visual representation of a women's religious infliction at time when, according to the Center of American Islamic Relations, there are even more crimes against Muslims today than there were shortly after September 11. Do you feel vulnerable wearing the hijab?"
The short answer is yes, I do feel vulnerable, but I don't think about it as often like one would normally think about, like driving a car or walking on the street. The thought sometimes comes into my mind, and then I said, I don't want to live my life in fear. But just like what happened in Virginia Beach, these people were just working in an office building. Somebody was getting a permit. We don't know when something horrible is going to happen. But I try not to put myself in places where I could be hurt. But I've also been in places where I think, well, somebody's going to say something. Like I was at Ground Zero wearing my hijab, paying my respects, and I thought if somebody was going to say something, it would be like maybe here, but nothing. I'm so thankful that as of today, so that was 2010 when I started wearing it, the hijab, and now we're 9 years later, I have yet to have anyone say anything negative to me about wearing my hijab. That's not to say that it could happen today, it could happen tomorrow, because the statistics are showing that women who wear the hijab in the Islamophobic time that we're in have experienced more hate crime towards them than ever before in America.
How do you educate your children? I know they were all born in the United States. You were born in the United States. How old did you have your kids when September 11 happened?
Yeah, my youngest was 1 when 9/11 happened. So the thing is about my boys, I have 4 sons, and I have 2 adult sons that are in their 30s and 2 that are now finished college and now will be a sophomore in college. When 9/11 happened, I didn't worry about the 2 little ones because they were in daycare. They were in a safe environment. The ones that I worried about were my older boys, because the one was at St. Louis University. He was in college there. The other one was a 14-year-old in high school. These 2 had the worst things said to them, like, don't be friends with them, he's a terrorist, or his father was responsible for the World Trade Center, or even changing their name. Like Ali, he changed his name to Al when somebody asked him on the street what your name was, because the person said we should lock up all the Muslims. So, these things were happening, and it was actually those instances that had me, because I worked at a hospital system for 18 years. I was part of my bios, I was a vice president for strategic planning for a local hospital system. I found that I was speaking for the hospital, but there weren't people speaking about my faith. And I said I needed to do that. I needed to do it not for myself, but for my children. I was the mama bear. I was going to do the protection that I could. And the only way I could figure out how to do that was through education. Because once you know something, then you know it. Otherwise, all the information you're getting about Islam is coming from a third-party source. And you really need to realize, who's behind that information piece. But unfortunately, of my 4 boys, the ones who've had the worst experience are the 2 younger ones, the ones that were just 1 and 3 at the time of 9/11. When they got into middle school, it was horrible. Going into a football game at the high school, oh, be careful of Abbas, he's got a winter coat, he could have a bomb underneath it. You know, and so it's those kind of comments, you know, you can say, roll it off your back, but you know, you say words don't hurt, the words do hurt. And so it became even more imperative that I went to the schools and I did my talks. And, you know, hate is a learned activity. Ignorance is learned, all right? So no matter, I mean, you can take this and apply it to any one of us. I'm just talking about being a Muslim woman, but you can apply this to anyone. I remember when I was speaking at a first grade class, and I was explaining how we do our prayers, and we bend down and we put our face in the sand, and not sand, on the ground. And then one of the little girls was walking out, and she said, "Mrs. Shabir, I know why you have a rug." And I said, "Why?" And she goes, so the sand doesn't get up your nose." I mean, it was just a simple 6-year-old comment. And I use that just as a way of just showing that here's a 6-year-old not being any other, just being herself. Just think about how the 6-year-old's like, ooh, 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 right? And this is how she was. Now, something happens to us as we grow older. And this is where we can say, okay, if I don't know, I need to seek knowledge. And so I'm so glad that you're having this, because sometimes when people I speak to, they say this is the first time they've met a Muslim woman. I could be the first time. And so I feel it's very important that wherever I go that we share the information in a safe place. So I'm really glad that you have this.
Thank you. I'm grateful that VMLYR actually fosters and nurtures the idea of brave question safe spaces. You know, you and I met for tea a couple of weeks ago, and we had a very long chat and 1 hour chat.
It was a long tea.
It was a long tea, yeah.
So much to talk about.
Lots to talk about. So as you know, I grew up in Malaysia, and as you know, Malaysia is a Muslim country, but I'm Hindu, and my ancestors who migrated to Malaysia in the 1800s were also Hindu, and we kept our heritage, we kept our culture, our faith, our beliefs, and being different is fine. To me, when I was growing up, being different is acceptable. I remember when you and I met for that conversation, something you said kind of stuck with me, that the very distinct difference between you and I, even though we grew up in two countries, and one an Islamic country, and for you in the United States, you weren't able to share about your family and your parents to your friends and your community. And that just broke my heart, because I talk about my mom and dad all the time, and my friends have to tell me, okay, time out, because you talk about your family all the time. Can you talk a bit about the struggle, and how did you overcome it? And how did you not grow up being jaded by it?
Well, so I grew up out east, and you say, oh, out east is more diverse. Well, back in the 60s, it wasn't. It wasn't diverse at all. I was the only brown person in my school, and I had the most different name. So whenever I had a substitute teacher, my last name was Ali Khan, so I would be in the beginning of the roster, and she would start saying my name like a motor, and then the class would say, Manaz, Manaz, of course it's Manaz. So it was like, at that point, it was like being different was not the best thing. I wanted to be just like everybody else, but my name was different, my skin and my color was different, my faith was different, but I didn't share this piece of information unless I felt that it was safe, unless it was a trusted person. And I grew up that way for the very longest time, that you had to really work hard to get to know me before I would share who I was. And then I realized, well, wait a minute, it's cool being different. It's glorious to be different. And it was really of a self-reflection on my own, that I wouldn't have been able to be like even talking like today. You may say, oh, well, she's speaking like this. Well, let me tell you, I didn't do that. You had to be my friend for a very, very long time before I would start talking about myself. And it was like a friend of mine said, well, you are fun to be around with. And I'm thinking, of course I'm fun to be around with. But I hadn't realized that I put this invisible wall, this barrier. And I wonder even today with the young people growing up that are Muslim or of another faith or dress differently or have a different name, how easy is it for them to be different today, to be not the same? Now they say like by the year 2050, I think it's less now, but 2050, there's not going to be a majority race, right? We're all going to be minorities. So it'll be interesting to see how my great-great-grandchildren are going to be living in that kind of environment where everybody is kind of equal. That to me is pretty exciting. I wish we could just kind of go right over there, but we can't. And so the best thing we can do is do this kind of conversation, because sometimes people don't even know. It's like V8. That's a commercial. I'm using your ad stuff here. You know, I said, oh, I should have had a V8. And maybe the young kids don't remember that one. But sometimes we just don't know. And now we're taking something from where you don't know what you don't know to something that now you know a little bit. I mean, we're just scratching the surface here, right? We only got an hour. So now it's like saying, okay, where do I take this? And how can I apply this to other places that I don't know enough about?
How did you teach your children that?
Well, my 14-year-old then, he's now 32, 33. I used to take him to things like this, that open hearts, open mind. He's actually in the program. And I was talking about him in the clip, and then he goes, yes, I'm the 14-year-old, you know. And so he started observing me doing what I was doing, and eventually he actually became a news reporter for locally here in Kansas City for about 5 years for the local NBC affiliate. And so that was like one way for him to be. And then the two younger ones, what they know, like if they tell mom anything, mom's gonna take action on it. And so sometimes they don't tell me things because they just want to blend in. They don't want to make a wave. They don't want mom to get involved. But now they're at this age where I can't be protective, right? They're 19 and 22, those little guys. They're not little anymore. And so now it's up to them to be able to speak for themselves, and they have. I mean, which is nice. They've seen me do these kind of things, and they are now able to do it themselves. One of the nice things I find is that I'll have a mother come to me at a gathering and say, will you come and speak to my daughter's school? And I'll tell them, I said, you know, I can, but you can also. I said, you can speak also. And so what I try to do is empower them that you don't have to be the most learned person in your faith. Just share how you practice, because there's 1.6 billion Muslims in the world. And just like how we may practice differently spirituality in our home compared to our parents or to our siblings, that's how it is in Islam as well. So just share how you live your life. That's basically. Or I'll have another mom come up to me and said, did you speak at this school? And I'll say no, but her teacher was at a gathering and like this and heard me speak and was able to apply the things that we had talked about in the school for her daughter, and it made a world of difference for that little girl.
That's truly wonderful, and so much where education can be the center of everything. And that's one of the things that we are practicing with our DEI practice and commitments and mission here at VMLYR is everything is in the heart of education. And if you think about it, where there is prejudice or whether there is bias or judgment, it's often because there is lack of education. So education it's such an important thing. In one of your articles you wrote, I'm interested in creating an environment where people can learn from each other in a way that doesn't make one person right and the other wrong. My hope is that we can create a place where fear and hatred will be replaced by friendship and peace. I can't tell you how much those words meant to me when I read it. And I'm sure to the majority of folks here, as we all are towards a singular quest in life, is to bring peace to human race and and our community that we live in. Share with us what compelled you to write such a profound statement.
Yeah, that's kind of like my mission in life. What I realized as I was going through my journey is that when I meet with people, I can be the best self that I can be. And so I would rather focus on the relationship that I can create with that person at that moment and not focus on the negative part of it. And every day we can make a commitment of, at least in the people that we are engaging with, how we can bring peace and friendship. Because it's easy to have a negative thought. It's easy for that to happen. It's easy when you watch the news and you see something and you're like, oh my gosh, here we go. But then the question is to yourself, okay, what am I going to do? And you may say, oh, this is too big. This is such a big issue that you can't do anything about it. But I will tell you, I thought that way before. And what I realize is that me, we have that opportunity every day. Every day we have that opportunity. And you just never know where your ripple goes. Because I'll tell you, one of the ripples that I never even expected was when I was at the hospital, the chaplains wanted me to do an in-service training because they had seen an increased number of patients that were Muslim coming to the hospital, and they wanted to better serve their needs. So I gave them Islam 101 kind of a conversation. Fast forward 10 years later, my husband is being brought into the emergency room, and he passed away. But they knew what to do. So they just, I was in another state because I was grieving about what was happening. But the staff, oh my gosh, they knew exactly how to handle it, even after 10 years. I was like, wow, who would have, that little drop, that little conversation, that ripple, 10 years later came back to me, you know. So you just never know what kind of impact you can have on someone. In this case, it was myself, the little girl in the school. You just never know how a kindness, of being kind to someone, opening the door, smiling. I'll have a conversation in the grocery store, where they have the corn and you're husking it. And I'll say, well, this corn is really great today, isn't it? And I'll just start it. And I'm an introvert. Oh, but I believe it, I'm an introvert. And I will start a conversation about husking corn, just so I know, because people have thoughts. They have the filters. They see me in the hijab. They're wondering about me. And then I just start a conversation. I go, oh, that one looks really good.
That's so beautiful. How many women who wears, how may a woman, sorry, let me rephrase that. How may a woman who wears a hijab experience life differently from a woman who does not wear a hijab?
Well, I was both, right? So again, when you're not, if you're a Muslim woman and you're not wearing a hijab, you can blend in very easily. I walk in a room, I get kind of noticed. And I don't want to be noticed. I just want to walk in the room and just be able to be like an attendee at a gathering, right? But when you're not wearing a hijab, you can definitely blend in today. And so I think some women are not comfortable wearing hijab. My two daughter-in-laws, they do not wear hijab. I don't know if one day they will or not. Again, that's something internal. They're in their early 30s right now. My two younger boys, when we talk about the person they would like to marry, right now they don't want a woman that wears a hijab. And to me that is a bit of a hurt, but I know why they're saying that, because they don't want anything to happen to their wife. And so I don't know if that will change. One of my second son, he has a roommate from Mizzou when he went to school, and when he was looking to get married, he was not looking for someone who was wearing hijab, but he ended up marrying a woman who wears a hijab. And so I tell my boys, I say, you never know. You may find someone that wears a hijab and it's okay. You know, you'll be comfortable. I mean, the boys, when I came off the airplane from the Hajj, their mouths dropped. They had no idea that I was going to come back wearing the hijab. And they've had to get used to it. In fact, the one that was in middle school, we were doing an orientation, and we're going up to the school, and he was walking 10 feet ahead of me. And I was like, you think walking ahead of me, they don't know that we're related? I said to him, you better come right back here and walk with me. And then he started doing it again. I said, okay, if you do it one more time, we're going back in the car. He did it one more time, and we went back in the car. Yeah. And then we sat in the car, and I said, okay, you will have to get used to this. You will have to get used to this. I'm your mother. You're my son. You will have to get used to this. Are you ready to get out of the car now? And he said, yes. And that was the last we ever had that. Now, they'll tell me, Mom, what? My hair is showing. So, like my little bit of my hair would come out. So they'll go, oh, your hair's showing. They're telling me. So they want me to tuck it back in. And I go, wow, we really moved from walking 10 feet ahead of me to like, oh, Mom. Yeah.
And there are different types of hijabs, right? And there are some that would actually expose a little bit of their hair, and some not. And what are the differences?
Well, first of all, there's a lot of cultural. So when I went on where some people think I have an Arab background because of the way I wear my hijab, and my parents came from India. Mm-hmm. But when I went on the Hajj, I went with a group of people that were from Lebanon, and I had no idea how to do the wrap. And so I would just say, do me. I would just bend down and say, just do me. And so this is how they taught me. So knowing sometimes the cultural aspect, the country from where people are from, that will be one piece. And then also it's just on how they want to wear, the free. Again, this is, in America we have a lot of freedom. The First Amendment allows that. Mm-hmm. And so, so women can wear it where some of the hair is showing, most of the hair is not. Mm-hmm. They can have like one piece. This is 2 pieces. I have like a little underscarf. I've been at Sam's Club, and a woman came up to me and wanted to know how I did this. It was an older woman. She goes, I bet that keep your ears warm in winter. And I said, yeah, it does. And so then I said, you wanted me to show you? And then she goes, yeah, that'd be great. So in the aisle, I can't remember what aisle I was in Sam's Club, but I looked around, and I know they probably had cameras, but looked around to see if anybody was looking, and I took off this top layer, and you couldn't see my hair still, but I showed her, this is how you do it. It's just one piece of cloth and then one pin, and that's it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. In the Muslim culture, concerning a hijab is probably the most confusing and difficult to accept for Western society. This is because of the widespread and mistaken notion that observing hijab is a heavy restriction imposed on Muslim women. Many Western women believe that Muslim women are oppressed and deprived of their rights. Are you forced to wear a hijab?
So do I look like I'm oppressed? No. Again, I'm in America, and I have all the freedoms that are afforded to every American that lives in this country. So I am not forced to wear the hijab. I am not oppressed. But there are countries where women have to wear it. Like I said, when I went for the Hajj, I had to wear it. Any major Muslim country, you have to wear it. I know Malaysia is more Western, so it's really a personal choice there as well. But when you go into the mosque, you have to cover. I don't have a problem. I never had a problem with that at all. It was funny. Somebody flew me out to New York to give a talk. They were opening up a women's battered shelter, and they wanted me to speak at it. And I wasn't wearing the hijab then, and my mother kept on insisting, you better take this, you better take this. And I'm like, no, Mom, here I am, a grown woman, and I'm still arguing with my mom, right? So I was like, no, Mom, no, Mom. And I took it with me, and as I'm going into this program, I see religious scholars walking into the building. And I'm like, wait a minute, I thought this was just going to be women. You know, I realized then that this was more than that, because they were supporting the having this shelter. And so they were all, the very highly religious scholars were there. So if I didn't have that with me, I would have been in a big problem, right? And so it was good that I had that with me, and I put it on. And so I also feel like I'm always prepared. You know, you said I have 4 Eagle Scouts. How many of you know about Boy Scouts? A lot of you, right? What's one of the first things about be prepared, right? So I used to keep a scarf before I was wearing. I remember him. He was a little baby when I last saw Mitch at the hospital. That's Mitch, yes. And so I used to keep it in my credenza, because I get called to do, if there was a Muslim patient, they needed some help. But now I'm always prepared. I had it in, you know, I'm always ready. I don't have to worry about that at all. But I think some people would think that this is a sign of oppression. But just remember that Mary, mother of Jesus, you always find a picture of her wearing a hijab. Religious Orthodox Jewish women, they wear a wig or a scarf. Sikh women, they also wear a head covering. Many faiths women wear a head covering, and it's a sign of how they want to practice their faith. So I think just saying, okay, Muslim women, it's not just Muslim women. There's a lot of women that of other faiths that wear a headscarf. And just know, like here in America, if a woman's wearing it or not. I mean, I would tell you, like my dad, when I was driving out to Las Vegas with my one son, had an internship in 19-year-old Las Vegas, right? Anyway, so we had to drive him out there. My dad was worried about me driving in western Kansas wearing a headscarf. He did not want me to wear the scarf. He said, wear your baseball cap. And I said, Dad, I'm going to be okay. But you know what? I learned just to say, let's say okay. And I took it with me. But I was out somewhere. I was at the McDonald's, and I'm wearing my scarf. And I said, okay, I always brace myself. If somebody's going to say something to me, it's going to be right here. This gentleman opened the door for me, was very polite. Again, sometimes we play things in our head that's not there, right? So again, it was awakening for me that don't always assume the worst. Just be who you are. And I go, I'm going to put that baseball cap in the glove compartment. I don't need that.
So speaking of wearing scarves and certain attires in religious spaces, I remember when this was years ago. It was like literally about 17 years ago. I was fortunate to actually sing with a Catholic choir, and simply because I went to a convent and a Hindu in a convent, kind of bizarre, but that's exactly where I went to school. It was the best school in town, and my parents are like, let's put the girls in the convent. So, but then when I came to the United States, I'm always very interested in chorale music. So the cathedral that we sang at were chosen to go sing for the Pope. And when we went, we were specifically told by the Pope's people that we had to be covered. And for someone who came from an Islamic country like Malaysia, and someone who knew about Christianity and grew up in an environment like a convent where most of my teachers were nuns, I completely forgot that was a practice. And so we actually had to do that. It was a nice kind of a reminder and awakening for me that to some extent a lot of other religions or faiths and beliefs also practice modesty, especially as a Hindu. When we go to a temple, we do have to cover ourselves. So it's, thank you for sharing that with us. I want to open up, we have a little bit more time, and I want to open up to the audience if you guys have any questions for Manars. And I am going to give this mic up.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm Faith Tyrell. I have a question for you. Oh, I'm sorry. I hate hearing my voice this loud. Suba and I actually attended a conference earlier this year, the Women in the World Summit in New York City, and one of the panels that we attended was a panel called The Exiles, and the two women that spoke on this panel, one was a very proud hijab-bearing woman, and the other spoke all sorts of she told us a bunch of different stories about why she chooses to not wear hers anymore. And I was curious what your view is on a hijab being like a religious symbol and now also a political statement. I just think that it's an interesting tension point, and I'd love to hear your thoughts.
So I don't wear my scarf as a political statement.
Correct.
Right. This is between me and the higher power here. So, and who, to myself, how I look at myself. So I really don't look to how people view me, except for, the educational part, right? That piece. But I don't know of women who do choose to wear the hijab as using it as a political.
She chose to not wear it.
She chose because she felt it was political. I can't answer. I don't have that experience, so I can't answer to that. I know of women who used to wear hijab and have not continued to wear the hijab, and it's been primarily because of the Islamophobic. I'm not going to get a good job. I'm going to get stymied in my career path, that kind of stuff, or I'm afraid. So there are women who have stopped wearing it for that I do know of that. I don't know what the political message is for not wearing it. But how would you know? Like if you just saw this woman today and she wore it and she didn't know it, how would you know that was her political statement unless she had a badge? I used to wear a hijab and now I don't for political. I don't know.
So what she actually did was at the conference, she had the hijab that she used to wear on a stick, and she waved it at the audience. And I just thought that it was really interesting that we could have a woman that was so proud and excited to share her faith and her reasoning with us, and then have somebody that clearly felt really differently, that had I want to say that they were from the same country, but I can't remember for sure. Yeah, and it was just interesting, and in my opinion, I had never thought of it like that. Oh, I'm sorry. I had never thought of it quite like that before, where somebody wore it to symbolize their faith, and somebody else would be making a political statement with something that they used to use to symbolize their faith. So I just didn't know if you had any thoughts. I was curious.
That's great about being in America. You could wear it just about anything.
Yeah.
Right. Or nothing at that point.
Thank you.
So when I was 13, I lived in a Muslim country, and I had a good friend of mine who was forced to put a hijab. So she went to school. Her dad dropped her to school. She had her hijab. Then she took it off. And only like for official pictures, she put it back on, and then took it back off. And just when she go home, she had it on. What would you say to like these? Because there's a lot of like these little girls that are forced to wear their hijab, because I have very good friends of mine who want to wear their hijab, but also a good friend of mine who don't want to wear the hijab and are forced. So.
Right. So like in other countries, like what country was that in?
I was in Dubai.
Dubai, right.
Yeah.
So in a country like Dubai, that is like the uniform, so to speak. That's how all the women are dressed. So it was more for her parents, insisting that she be conformed to the dress code of that country. Again, she's being forced. If she felt she was being forced, did she say she was feeling that she was forced?
Yeah, because she didn't like to wear it at school. Like she had when she went to class like without her hijab, and just not to upset her father, she put it back on. But
yeah, no, it's unfortunate. I mean, to me, I know that is sad, but I also know like little girls here in America. Right now, every night we have gatherings at the centers or religious centers, and all the little girls are wearing it, and they're wanting to wear it. So it's like, again, I think when it's not forced on you, obviously it's a lot easier. It's like for anything that's forced on you that you don't want to be doing, you're gonna resist it. You're gonna be angry about it. But if it comes from within, like no one forced me. I had to wear it when I went to Saudi Arabia for the Hajj, but then when I didn't have to wear it when I came home. That I chose to do that. And so again, you know, I have been asked the saying that because I live in America, I have that freedom, and I do. I totally acknowledge that that is why I have that freedom. And if I chose not to wear it, that would be fine also. Nobody's going to be either happy or mad at me for wearing it or not wearing it. Like my parents, like I told you, my dad wanted me to take it off because he was worried about me. So it's really my connection to the higher power of why I wear the hijab. I think there was
a question. Thank you. Hi,
Hi.
Whoa. Jasmine Green here, and I had a question. As far as the hijab, it covers your hair and head. Are there any clothing restrictions or practices you choose to do as well when you wear your hijab?
Yeah, so wearing hijab, I used to wear dresses, so I stopped wearing dresses even before. See, this was that journey, right? I was already on this place of spiritual development. And so being at the C-suite, I would still wear slacks, a suit, but I would put a scarf around my neck, all right? And then when I started, and I got rid of just about all my skirts and there's a couple of dresses I still kept. I still have in my closet. You know, they're like special dresses I bought a long time ago. I don't think I'll ever get rid of those. But then swimming became an issue for me. And I used to swim all the time when I was a kid. And when I grew up and became mature, my grandmother said, okay, you girls shouldn't go swimming because it's showing all of your body, that kind of thing. The modesty is gone. So I had to stop when I was like 12. But then someone invented burkinis. Burkini, yeah, you heard me right. So it's a two-piece. Actually, it's a three-piece when you add the scarf. But it covers everything. And so I'm now back to swimming. I've gone to different places where I've done snorkeling wearing my burkini. People sometimes watch and say, okay, how is she going to get in the water? And I go, oh, she gets in the water. And it's made out of swimming suit material. And so
it's like a bodysuit, like what some of the Olympics swimmers when they, yeah.
But it's not body revealing. Like you can't really see my shape.
Got it,
I mean, it's kind of like as a little skirt-ish thing with pants, you know. So those, but then I also always dress so my arms are, you know, are covered, and that kind of thing. So. And then the scarf, I try to wear it so it covers my chest area. So it's not revealing. So when I speak, I want you to look at my face and hear my words and not be judging me on, oh, well, I never have a bad hair day. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we're just right at time. Want to thank you so much for coming here, and especially, you know, sharing with us. Sharing sometimes it can be difficult, especially when you don't know the audience, and being vulnerable, opening your heart, and just being honest. So we the VMLYR family would love to just give you a big hug and thank you so much for being here. I can confidently say that I'm a better person after just being in the session. I feel more educated, I feel more empathetic, and I can speak confidently for the folks that are here as well. And happy Eid, and I don't know, is that a proper way to say? Is it happy Eid?
Eid Mubarak.
Eid Mubarak.
Like celebration, so Eid Mubarak.
Okay, yeah. Eid Mubarak.
Thank you.
And thank you everyone for attending, and until the next Brave Question Safe Spaces, I think it's going to be in New York, where Kansas City will take a break, and we'll have a Brave Question Safe Spaces to celebrate and honor the Pride Month, and more information to come out on that, so be on the lookout. And thank you all so much for being here.
anybody has questions and they want to come and ask me quietly, they're you're welcome to do that too.
I should have mentioned that, but thank you so much.